Hey, welcome to the process. My name is Dr. John Bush. This is my video lesson series for the Science of Fantasy Football.com, where all my goodies are, as well as my partner in crime, D Mike, with his weekly big game projections and all sorts of goodies that he has. Lots of articles up, lots of my videos up for the year. I'm continuing. This is part 4. 2015 to 22 positional ADP predictions. So preseason predictions for the end of the season results, right? Part 4, been working on wide receivers, and wanted to hit abbreviations you may see. Preseason, end of season, fantasy points per game, taking these preseason predictions of and then following up with what actually happened using 8 years data, Excel pivot tables, box and whiskers, ANOVA, Tukey testing, chi-square, and fairly current ADP player profiles. In other words, trying to bring this all into the 2023 draft season. So, previous work, I have looked at the effects or the results, I guess the predictions, of the public's view of team wide receiver groups, crews, whatever you want to call it, versus wide receiver ones that are predicted and what they actually did. There were some really interesting differences and so-called, and in quotes, actionable material for 2023. Go see the previous lessons. Now, I wondered, what about the quarterback? Is that predictive of wide receiver ones? Okay. So, can the public's view of the quarterbacks for teams give us insight into wide receiver ones predicted preseason, of course, ADP, and then what they actually do? In other words, end of season. In other words, is there a way to use the predictions that the public is laying down? Is that real or not? And this is dividing quarterbacks up preseason, top 6, next 6, 13 to 18th, and 19th to 24th, and worse. And then what you see are the actual fantasy points per game of the wide receiver one, preseason predicted, and their end of the season results. And I stained or colorized the top third green, the bottom third red, so you can probably see that there's some very interesting things happening just right away, just looking at the raw data here. And if we turn our box and whisker plots out and look at these 4 groups of the wide receiver one predicted, we can see what really sticks out to me are the piss poor quarterbacks, 19th, 24th, and worse, and where their wide receiver ones end up. And they're at the bottom here. If you look at the averages here, they're certainly fantasy points per game. The top is 15, the bottom is 12. So 3 points per game, that can win you a week. I'm not sure about the mid spots, but let's see how all this plays out. So if you follow my other ones, then we apply this chart to ANOVA testing. Here we go. just for sake here, just for normality here, the top quarterback base wide receiver ones versus the bottom is 22% difference in end of the season value, from 15.5 to basically 12.1. Okay. Is this real? Yes, it is. The F stat 4.7, that is statistically significant. So there at least is a difference in the pairing of these four treatments. And that is the top versus the bottom. Everything else is not significant. Okay. But the bottom versus the top is significant. Really gives us some leverage here, folks. That's why I got a star. Treatment 1 is the top versus treatment 4 the bottom. You can look at the median there, and this is two key numbers here. I don't worry too much about that. But anyway, it's above these numbers here, and see it's 3.37, and if it's above there, then that means it's significant at the 0.001. So this difference is not due to random chance. It is real. We can depend on it. So if we graph out this 2015 to 22 wide receiver 1 end of the season. So I had the points, and I had that chart here. Here's the points. And notice I had the top, the bottom, and the mid. Okay, so now if I visualize the top, bottom, and the mid in the top quarterbacks, the next, and the bottom, and then look at the top, mid, and bottom of the wide receiver ones predicted, and we look at and I colorize the top group here, the wide receiver ones in green, the mid is yellow, and the bottom is 1. And so Tukey says this group is different than that group. Check it out. This is what makes life fun. Look at the complete opposite findings here. Look at this. 23, and again, this is over 8 years, 23 wide receiver ones predicted from teams with crappy quarterbacks, in quotes. I'm not really saying compared to the top. Yes, 23. So, question is, are these where you want to get your wide receiver ones, or these? So these are obviously the best group here to pick from. You're saying, what about these? Tukey says we should ignore any differences and not pay attention to what this data is showing us here. Isn't that interesting? We see some differences, but we just can't rely on it statistically, right? I know we want to. I will note though that the failure rate in the top 6 quarterbacks for wide receiver 1 pretty low. So the public is telling us, right? The public is telling us, giving it to us on a platter. I know most people are aware of that, etc., etc. But it's one thing to kind of think that's what should be versus testing it. And especially this. Did you know it was this bad? I don't think people do. This is dramatic. And if we do a percentile breakdown of these thirds, here's the high, here's the low, and look at the crappy quarter. 52% failures, 19 here. Big difference. So roughly, what is that? Whatever 50 divided by 20 is, 5/20ths. What is that? Whatever that is. Whatever that is, greater chance. Definitely almost 3 to 1. So when you're grabbing wide receiver ones from this population, half of who you're grabbing is a failure. Another way to look at it, half of what you're fishing for is going to be undersized and you need to throw them back. Wide receiver ones, folks, there's this idea, well, if they're wide receiver ones, they're, still worth. I understand everything has a price point, but you need to know going in, this bucket has small fish in it, so don't be surprised when you keep pulling out minnows. Okay? Don't be like, well, where's the big fish? There's not many in there. There's only half. So let's look at who the WR1s are. These are the usual suspects. Now, there are some trickiness here. Okay, Chase, Diggs, Brown, Moore. I think people know that. Check out Tony and Bateman. Not a lot of failure in here, only about 20% failure. So, what is that? One of these is a failure. So, people would say most likely one of these two. Okay, one of those two, on average, is a failure, maybe, right? Because 80% chance that they're not a failure. So, these get my attention. They deserve extra looks. Okay? Extra looks. What about the bottom ones? Here are the bottom plays. Cooper Kupp, Rutrow. Not saying he's a small fish. I'm just saying he's hanging around the bucket where half of them are minnows. And you've got to pay high for him. Okay? Just be aware. His trickiness. Olave, Samuel, Watson. A lot of minnows here. Here's some at the bottom. Look at Thielen at 60. I understand there's minnows, but you're not paying much for him. Okay? So, and look at Burks. Not paying much for him. Brown, Johnson. So these are getting my attention, even though the bucket is half full of duds. And I hate to use these words, but I'm trying to hammer this home for you. Okay? So this was very enlightening to me. Okay. What about wide receiver? Is this supposed to be twos here? Yeah, I think I just did these. Yeah, so my bad. Those should be twos here, folks. This is mislabeled. These are twos, not ones. Okay, is there a difference in the twos? Be nice to know. We apply the ANOVA testing, no difference. So, whereas previously there were key differences, now there's not. You're saying, well, that didn't help. Well, actually, it does. Because now W-2s from poor teams, you can't just say, oh, they suck, the worst. Nope. The stats say you've got to ignore that and just treat them as everybody's a two. If you look at it and you do the box and whisker, and I should have uh, filled these in with green. Okay, much better. So, whatever reason, my font size should be top. Anyway, there it is. So, W-2s, No difference. So that means, from my thinking, that the W-2s from the poorer teams might be a better bargain than from here. But you see now, so we we take the data, but we got to use it kind of in an opposite way here. And here's what I noticed: the whiskers are really high in the W-2s from the poorer teams. Look, I understand we can say that these are not different, but it sure looks suspicious that the whiskers are highest in the poorer teams for W-2s versus here. So, who are these W-2s? Here are the W-2s from the better teams. Okay, look at Rice, Mooney are W-2s. Okay, uh, look at Phillips, Jefferson, Mingo, Dobbs. These are all catching my attention. The data says these are as good as these. I know Smith and Higg. Okay, I know this is as a group, not individuals. Okay, as a population, you should not, even though I've cut them, you should not, uh, separate them. My argument is I think you can fish in here and get some W-2s late, especially in best ball and things, and you get some bargains here. You saw that upper whisker, that on occasion you're really getting some nice W-2s here historically over 8 years. Just saying. And notice the downside pressure from the top teams. Statistically, we can't say that. But I'm looking at trends, and I'm making a note in my diary what I'm seeing. This is leading me as a concept to think about fishing for these and being a little worried about some of these Flowers, Rice, Mooney. Be a little worried here, okay? Versus, I'm getting some bargains here. Jefferson, Phillips. So just be aware of that. Okay, I think that's all I'll say on part 4. Got what this, read this. Running backs. Okay, so I'm doing running backs part 5. Okay, part 4, we're done with wide receivers. Woo woo. Extra fun. I'm back.